afternoon, and welcome to the Finland Azure User Group session. Finland Azure User Group is all about continuous learning. It's a community around cloud computing and Microsoft Azure. The company was founded in 2013, and we currently have somewhere around 1,600 members. We organize around 10 events yearly, most of them in person before, now virtually, of course. This session is part of the virtual Azure Tips Tricks 2020, which is a group of sessions around different kind of Azure topics. Next presentation will be by Antti Arnell in a week starting 14th of September. So my session today is about when we're still here, even better today. My name is Teemu Tapanila. I work in a company called Cloud Paralysis. I'm an Azure and Azure DevOps expert, of course, for Finland. I've been working with Azure since 2011. I've been Azure MVP since 2014. I do lots of speaking and training on Azure. I happen to have a very interest and like on it. Today, we are not going to talk about ARM at the basics. I do lots of sessions about ARM and I really like it. But I would say past 3 years, there hasn't been that many changes on ARM templates. And I don't think that they have got that much love from Microsoft, which is really sad because everything in Azure is really based on ARM. Even if you don't really use ARM or you don't think that you're using ARM, everything underlying is based on the ARMs. But today we're going to focus on the new features. And these features are really giving new properties and new capabilities to the ARM itself. We'll start talking about deployment scripts. This is one of my favorites and been a long time coming. It really makes a huge difference. Then we're talking about something simple called automatic deployment history deletions, which arrived on August 6th, 2020. Then we are going to talk about ARM schema updates, Visual Studio Code ARM tools updates. Then we are going to end the session by talking about Bicep. Bicep is something really new, was just released. So let's talk about the deployment scripts. And this is maybe not that well used feature yet. And this is something really new also. The idea is that inside of your ARM template, if you want to do something which is not doable with ARM, let's just say that you want to trigger a third-party service, you want to fetch data from somewhere, you want to restore a database, you want to do something which is not really an ARM related. This is basically a way how you can write a script that's basically run by the ARM. And how it basically works behind the scenes is that it starts an Azure container instance, puts your script there, tells it to run, waits till it runs, gets the output from it, and then you can move on. Interesting thing here is, can you put as complex things as you want there? Yes, you could always do this, but basically the nice thing here is that this is fully automated the way that how ARM calls it, waits till it responds, and then you can use it. There is always a links in my slides. So if you're interested in this, there will be a link to the whole slide set in the end of this show, where you can get the whole slide set and see the documentation and all of that information. The whole idea is all about getting the benefits of ARM, but still putting those small last pieces into it. Currently, you can write the scripts with 2 coding standards. You can either use PowerShell or you can use Azure CLI, whichever fits for you. The interesting thing is that everything is running on Linux. So if you are testing this out, the best way to do it is in a subsystem. And if it runs on subsystem, most perfectly it runs here. There's other ways to debug, but that's the easiest way. Whenever these scripts are run, they need to have some kind of identity. So basically you need to create managed identity for them and give it that to your script and say, hey, this is the identity you're going to run with. You can pass parameters if you need to the script through the ARM template, and then you can specify outputs of the ARM template, outputs of the deployment script that are then to be used in the other parts of your ARM template. Here is an example. On the left side, we will see what it would look like before, and on the right side, we can see what it would look like now. So we would first do PowerShell and Azure CLI, where we would go and get certificate information from somewhere. Then we would do our ARM deployment, where we create the key vault, we put the secrets to the key vault, and then we put also the secrets of the database there. Then the next step would be that we are creating, populating the schema to the database, which we created previously. And then our last step would be that we are deploying Azure function that is connecting to the database. And in this scenario, for some reason, our database would need to have the schema before the Azure function is connected or something bad happens. Well, it's a little bit like a strange scenario in that sense. But previously, you had to split this in multiple parts and you had to run this somewhere. If I would say that I would be running this on Azure DevOps, pretty simple to do. If I would say that how easy this is to run on your local machine, test this on your local machine, it would be like, not that easy. Now you can do just simple ARM deployment that does all the things. It runs the scripts on Azure container instances. You don't need to worry about anything like, do I have the right version of Azure CLI installed? Do I have a PowerShell, right identities, any of that kind of stuff. You could just have one ARM template, do it all there. Is there any negative sides here? Yes, of course, everything like normally. With great power comes great responsibility. You can do stupid things with this because you can basically turn your ARM templates into PowerShell script engines. So basically you would just be chaining PowerShell scripts or anything like that. Might not make that much sense, but at the same time, if it does, feel free to use it. There isn't that many real life examples of usage of this yet that I have seen, but it's definitely coming up more and more. Another thing to notice is that this is still in a preview, so if you build production on top of this, it might be getting tricky at some point. Personally, I currently use this in a few environments, and we have been really happy with the whole features and the performance of this feature. A little bit about debugging and debugging and developing. So if you want to get the best developer and debugging experience, you can basically either host it on locally in a Docker container, or you can spin up an Azure container instance and get the exact version running there. And totally depending on which one you prefer, do you prefer the container to be in your local computer, or do you prefer it to be in Azure and get the real experience? Both ways are fully supported. Then, next feature, automatic deployment history deletion. This is, I would say, pretty interesting one. A little bit depending on how many deployments you're doing and how you're doing deployments, you might not have ever even reached this issue. But basically, every time that you do a deployment in a resource group, the Azure portal keeps a log of that that deployment. So basically it knows what was the ARM template that you were using, what were the parameters that you were using. The only thing that it basically strips out is if you have any kind of secure parameters that you gave in, it basically removes those, but everything else is there. And the whole idea is that it keeps everything in the memory. And previously, there still is a deployment limit, meaning that if you have done 800 deployments to the resource group, you're not able to create new deployments anymore. What you normally have to do is that before you do any deployment, you would go to the resource group, clean up all of them, or you write some kind of logic to do it. I think that was very cumbersome, and basically what we normally did is that we cleared all the history instead of writing some kind of fancy logic to delete only some of it. And I don't think that that was that good experience. Finally, this August, Azure added this automation that it basically does that when you reach 775 deployments, it's going to start deleting deployments from the beginning of the history. So basically, all the oldest deployments are going to get deleted to make space for your new deployments. And this is now the default behavior. If you want to stop this for some reason, there is a ways to do it on Azure portal, on the documentation, but most likely this is exactly what you want, and it is nice feature. Then ARM schema updates. If you have ever written ARM templates and you have been like, where do I find this schema? How do I know how does this schema works? And then you have been more like being pointed to some blog and be like, hey, this is how you create certain Azure resource based on ARM template. This is only case for the new templates, sometimes some a little bit older ones, but that experience is pretty bad. The Azure team has been more and more moving to automatically generate the schemas so that every time that they make changes, there is a new schema automatically generated in the GitHub repository and also published into the REST API, the schema repository, which means that your IntelliSense and all of those will be working. So if you have ever been doing ARM template writing with Visual Studio Code, and you have had this scenario where it's saying like, oh, this API version doesn't exist. But then when you run the template, it's working fine. The schema missing from the schema repository has been the scenario why this happened. And the whole idea is that they're trying to work really, really hard to fix all of these issues. Another thing is that if you ever have any issues with the schemas, just go to that GitHub repository, raise an issue. You normally get an answer within a few weeks, and they will try to solve it very, very quickly, which is really, really nice. There has been a huge improvement here past, I would say, 2 years. But before that, it was like not my problem. Then Visual Studio Code ARM tools updates. So this is a very, I would say, interesting one. There has always been a little bit of question of like, would you use Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code to write ARM templates? This was like 3 years ago. And because Visual Studio Code has become the de facto of doing anything basically with Needs text editor, the ARM tooling in Visual Studio Code has been already like way past Visual Studio. Now it's getting more and more nice supports, nice feature support. So one of the things is that it finally supports more and more complex scenarios where you have started to split your template into multiple files. And the other one is parameter file support. So especially when you have more like complex parameter files, before that support was, I would say, horrible. Now it's okay. So there has been clearly a huge effort put in Visual Studio Code to get it the first level tooling and making it better to basically improve your experience of writing ARM templates. I'm personally really, really happy about the whole support that it's getting. Then the last topic where I want to spend quite a while is Bicep. So one of the problems with the ARM templates and with the whole ARM language has always been, I would say, learning curve. Learning to write ARM templates is painful. The first, I would say, 20 ARM templates are going to be very, very painful. And after that, it gets better. After 100, you start to be like, hey, it's nice again. Then when you go even more complex, you're like, no, it's not so nice again. And then once you have written enough of them, you're like, yay, I can live with this. And that has always been a very like little bit struggle, that when you start to create ARM templates, they are not that nice to scale. Especially if you start to go into these kind of scenarios where you would like to start sharing ARM templates between different teams. And different teams have a little bit of different strategy how they are writing ARM templates and what would be the best way to do it. And then it starts to be like, oh, we use parameters like this, they use parameters like that. We kind of don't like this that much, all these kind of things. So now comes Bicep. Don't ask me where the name comes from. I've heard a rumor that it's something, a joke about ARM, and now there's a Bicep. Not sure if that's how relevant that is, but that has been the scenario. So this is the new domain-specific language, which basically has just been released. I think it was this week's Tuesday. So this is really, really new thing. Absolutely not production ready today, but hopefully it will be evolving really, really soon. So it's a transparent abstraction layer over ARM, which means basically anything you can do with ARM can be done with Bicep. Anything that can be done with Bicep can be basically done with ARM. The only difference is basically how easy it is to do certain things with ARM versus Bicep. The whole idea is that you write the Bicep files. I will show you examples a little bit later, and then you compile those files into ARM templates. So basically, take a Bicep in, get ARM templates out. Simple and easy. Another thing which you can do, I'm not sure, like, doesn't really work that well yet, but will work better in the future. Take ARM template in, generate Bicep out of it. But the same thing as with an ARM generation. So if you go any resources in Azure portal, you can always export a template. The quality of that template is meh. It's getting better, but it's still like not so nice yet. The same thing here is that if you generate Bicep files from ARM templates, they're not that nice, but they're definitely getting there. Then the Bicep tooling. So there is basically two tooling. There's a CLI, which does the compilation, and then there is the Visual Studio Code plugin, which provides you some IntelliSense. Currently the IntelliSense is a little bit like, I would say, lacking still, but definitely going to get there. And then it provides the CLI, which is written with .NET Core. So currently there is ready-made packages for Mac, Linux, and Windows. The current version is 0.1, and this is definitely a new way, I would say, of, like, not new, but way of basically working is that they are publishing it very raw. So the idea is that it's there now, feel free to comment. It's not like start using Bicep, Bicep is amazing. It's more like now is a good time to start thinking about Bicep. Think about what exactly would you like it to do? What exactly would you be like dreaming of it to be doing? There is a really good documentation about what are they aiming for? What are the features that they're going to do? And basically now is exactly the perfect time that if you have ever dreamed of better way to do ARM and you have great ideas, go to Bicep GitHub repo, start commenting, start reading. There is currently like 100 issues there. There is very specific points of like, they're like saying like, we need to do this, we need to support this. And it's hopefully getting way, way, way better in the future. But let's jump into like looking at how Bicep looks like. So this is a Bicep simple sample. So basically this is a Bicep file. How do you know it's a Bicep file? It's something.bicep as the extension of the file. So basically it's saying that this is a resource. Then what is the name of the resource? This is called STG, so storage account, shortened nicely. Everybody knows what it means. And then basically what is the namespace? And then what is the API version that we're going to use? Then what is going to be the name, the location, kind, SKU, what are we going to do? And then basically a nice thing is that this supports commenting. So you can nicely put comments there. You can either do single line comments or you can do multi-line comments the same way as you can do in most of the programming languages. And here is basically then the magical output that you get. So basically you compile the Bicep, you get ARM as an output. Nothing like super interesting here. Then here is a little bit more, I would say, complex scenario. So here we are saying that we are taking parameter location string as a parameter. Sorry, so we are taking location as a parameter and the type is string. And by default, we are saying that we think that you want to deploy this to the location where the resource group is located. Basically, pretty basic stuff. Then we are saying that we have this certain prefix called STG. Then we are saying that global redundancy is currently true. You can then of course say false if you want to do this. This is to basically make sure that are we going to put globally redundant storage or locally redundant storage as a parameter to the storage account. Here, one of the nice things is that the concatenation of the strings is way, way more simpler. So if you have ever done a more complex concatenation of the strings on ARM templates, they tend to become very heavy to write. They're all about like this.resource ID, all kind of like, I would say ceremony. It's pretty high, meaning that the ARM templates and the concatenation becomes really, really long. And the whole idea here is to make them more simpler, more easier to use, but still gain lots of similarities to their ARMs so that you don't need to rethink about, what is the name of the unique string? It's the same. The resource group ID, exactly the same. And here we're also defining what are our outputs. Same thing as if you wanted outputs on the ARM templates. You can just say storage ID, storage name, what is our basically features, exactly similar. And this is then the nice ARM template that gets generated. Nice thing here is that this is going to becoming, I would say, closer and closer into basically PowerShell. So I would say that this syntax is getting a little bit closer to the PowerShell than the ARM template. And the whole thinking behind this is to get more and more people who think that the ARM template reading is not that fun, they are hard, to start using this and then editing this. So is this the future? I think for most of the people, questions like the answer is varies. I think that if you already have invested heavily in ARM, you already have perfected your skill and craft on ARM template writing, I don't think so. But lots of people who are new to Azure, new to ARM, I don't think that they might be in the future going to the ARM that much. I think that their main thing will be the Bicep. Of course, now comes to always an interesting question. When? I think when is more about 2-3 years in the future. This is absolutely something that is still evolving, still coming. It's not something that is ready today, but in 1 year, I think it will be great. Oh, sorry. In 1 year, I think it will be good. In 2 years, I think this will be great. And what I really, really like is that there is a huge amount of effort being put on ARM, and it's getting the love it deserves. So there is more effort from Microsoft's side on improving ARM than previously. I would say that after the ARM was born with the whole new portal, if you don't remember and don't know the old portal, you're happy and be happy. The old portal was not that good, but basically when the new portal came out, that's when the ARM was getting lots of features, lots of feature requests were done, and I don't think it has been improving that much after that. And you can clearly see that now is a time that they are thinking that, hey, we need to put more effort on ARM, and they're clearly putting it, and I think it's showing a lot. So ARM is getting new cool features, ARM is improving, and there is really, really bright future on ahead of it. And now is a perfect time that if you have any kind of thing that needs to be improved, now is a great time to start requesting it. Personally, what I will be doing, one of the first things that I will be asking them to do is basically, how do you generate random passwords, like real random passwords using ARM templates? There has been question about this, that where would make sense to generate the passwords or the random passwords. Personally, I think that the Azure key would be the best one, but I don't care. As long as I can do it with ARM, relatively simple way, I would be super happy. Any questions? Now is a great time to ask any questions. Oh, one of the features that I didn't add here is something called ARM what if deployments. I'm a huge fan of that, but the sad thing here is that I don't think that has been improving as much as I thought about that. So the idea about what if on ARM is that you can deploy to Azure, but if before you deploy, you can ask is that what would happen if I deploy this? And it would basically then tell you exactly how it would, this deployment, how it would change the infrastructure. And the perfect use case for this, which I've seen, is that before every pull request, we would run what if, and instead of showing you how exactly somebody's changed the schema, it would show you how it would change the environment. Let's just say that somebody makes a small IP addition into the ARM file or the JSON file. We don't really know how it will affect all of it if it's very complicated. But on the what if output, we would see that, hey, it's doing a firewall opening this way. Looks good. Let's approve it. I haven't done that. I tried it and I failed miserably because the output of the what if is still, I would say, not that clean. So hopefully in the future, it's going to be improved. And I think that together with the whole Bicep and everything, I think the whole testing and validation of the ARM, which is listed there as something that they want to do, is going to get more love and more effort. So hopefully it will be done. Yes, if you have any questions, please ask. Then also remember that Microsoft Ignite is coming September 22 to 24. Go and register. I think that there's lots of new features, or like not that many. Yeah, I would say new features. I'm personally not expecting new services that much. I'm just expecting more and more features that will help and save my time to be coming in all kind of Azure services. I personally don't think that there's going to be any huge announcement like this huge new feature came out. New service came out. I'm just expecting that they're like, hey, we added this to the event creator, we added this to the service bus, we added this to the app service, that kind of enhancements. So there's a question that will Bicep make it easier to inject layer two JSONs? Yes, that's one of the whole ideas that if you need to do this whole like kind of like log analytics stuff, there is an example of that they want to make things easier to inject and escape and all of that. If you want to make sure that that happens, I would currently go and raise an issue into the Bicep and say like, hey, could you create a sample that has this kind of log analytics rules? And then I think that somebody would make sure that it works really well with the Bicep. But yes, that was one of the design goals of the Bicep, is to make string concatenation and string manipulation way easier. Same with the whole JSON manipulation. So what is the biggest test I made with Bicep? I wrote a service which contains 5 Azure services. It compiled fine. The depends on worked as I was expecting. Was not too complicated with it. The IntelliSense, not happy with that. Everything else, it's okay. I think it's very, very early. So I don't think it's fair to judge it in any way, except that I see a huge potential. And if you look at the amount of people that are working on it, this is a really huge effort, and they are going to make sure that this will really fly. So yeah, I'm absolutely going to put more effort into it, but at the same time, it's too early for real production. So for now, it's more for demos and that kind of things. Okay, so how fast things get complicated? I don't know. All the samples looked good. I don't yet know the answer of like how fast it will be horrible, but I'm really, really looking forward to it. And then there is something called like modules, which is more about how you can define things that go together. Once that comes out, I think that will enable really, really interesting scenarios. For example, if you have ever done SQL managed instance together with networking with ARM template, I think currently, like if you write it out, however you write it out, it becomes like 600 lines of JSON. I think that's horrible experience. And if you make even one small mistake there or something, it's totally unusable. And the managed instance deployment takes about 2 hours. So not very fun to write an ARM template for that. So for that kind of stuff, I'm really, really expecting the Bicep to bring a huge value. If you still have questions, feel free to ask. You can find the whole slide set from that link. If you have any questions, feel free to reach me on Twitter, shoot me an email. I'm always happy to answer any questions about ARM. I really, really think that it's going the right direction and it's getting the love that it deserves. So I'm really, really happy about that. any final questions? All right. Thank you, and have a good rest of the day.